create safe spaces and safe communities to where we can avert that tragedy as much as possible, because relationship is one of the biggest preventers of suicide.
Yeah, and so I appreciate you guys bringing suicide up. Obviously, if you have thoughts of suicide, the hotline for suicide is 988. Is that correct? And so there's a place that you can talk, and someone that you can talk to about those feelings. Melissa and I's church back home, actually just recently, one of the members committed suicide, and somebody that we knew personally. And so this is something that doesn't just affect people out there, right? That this is something that affects everyone and is kind of an equal opportunity offender. And I think we do well to look it square in the eye and to be able to acknowledge the fact that this happens among people like us. And so definitely appreciate you guys raising that up. And we've noticed, things like mental illness be diagnosed more often, it seems, right? That I think you shared with me, Kat, that we've been studying this idea of mental illness really just for the last 100 years, right? And the ability to diagnose is probably even more recent than that, right? Of being able to acknowledge what it is and what it looks like. And so, is there any kind of thoughts you guys have on that of seeing this more in young people than we've seen in the past? Is there any response to that?
Yeah, I would say learn about it, the condition and what you can do if you see it in a youngster. And treatment does help. It exists, and it's helpful to the conditions. And I think, I grew up in a family that recognized there was a problem and did their best to address it and learned a lot, and I care a lot about that, and I love them for it. And they're actually here supporting me today. So
thank you, Sam's family. Yeah, I think that's a great, we can have a temptation, especially when we see something like mental illness being prescribed a lot to a lot of young people. We can have a temptation to kind of roll our eyes at that, right? And to be able to say, well, this wasn't, the case when I was growing up. And that can be true, and it can also be necessary to prescribe that and to be able to acknowledge kind of what's going on in somebody else's life. Both things can be true, and I think that's kind of an important thing. And so we talk about kind of why, right? And I think it's really clear, as Kat said before, we ourselves are experiencing these symptoms of anxiety or depression, or even things such as severe mental illness. We ourselves are experiencing those things, or we know or we love someone who is experiencing that. And if you find yourself in that later category, or even if you find yourself in the first category, you acknowledge, kind of this helpless feeling, right? And so the question then becomes kind of, what do we do about this? And this is why we thought it was just really important for the church to acknowledge this. The church is, our commission is to be the body of Christ in the world, right? We are called the ecclesia. We are called to be the body of Christ. That means we are to represent Jesus to the world. And one of the things that Jesus did is he brought healing to people. And we are called to be that presentation of healing. And how do we do that when it comes to mental illness is really, really important. And I wanted to share an example of a time that I myself kind of tried that and kind of failed spectacularly. But we had an opportunity, and we have another one coming up, but we had an opportunity to participate in an all-church Bible study. And one of the topics that came up was this topic of demon possession. And I had tried to, in the study and in the curriculum, tried to address demon possession and tried to give people several options on the ways to address that. The way I really wanted people to address that was to be able to acknowledge that everything that happens to our soul affects our outer body, and everything that affects our outer body affects our soul, which I think is a genuine sentiment. What I ended up doing is inadvertently, in a hurry to get the curriculum out and published, was made a comment about mental illness and demon possession that was hurtful to those who were experiencing it. And Sam and Kat were brave enough to bring that to our attention. And so Sam and Kat, I really appreciate that, and I'm really sorry about that harm that caused. And I really appreciate you guys being able to bring that to our attention. I think this has been really clarifying for me to understand that churches, even in our own best, our best intentions, can actually end up doing harm when it comes to addressing mental illness. And that makes it really hard. It almost makes, the church want to step back away completely from it, right? And just be able to, well, we can't address it well, we're not going to do it at all. But I think Sam and Kat have helped us kind of experience that Matthew 18 reconciliation. And if we're able to do that really well, then we're able to fail in front of each other and be able to kind of move forward. And I really appreciate you guys. That was kind of the impetus to this conversation. Sam and Kat are so brave. They said, hey, you did this wrong. And I said, great. Do you want to preach? And they were great enough to be able to share with us. Given kind of what we've experienced so far, right? What do we do? And we've kind of addressed and acknowledged what mental illness is. We've acknowledged who might be struggling with mental illness and what it looks like. So what do we do?
Well, the top two key facets to addressing it as someone who's trying to be supportive that I can list are education and compassion. Educating yourselves is one of the best things that you can do as a support